Let's move up one race. State treasurer. I guess Todd, or was it Todd Jr. Todd Hollenbach Jr.'s 8 years are up. Yeah. I guess he's running for a judgeship up in Louisville. And in that one, we have the Democrat Rick Nelson, state representative, I think, down around Middlesboro, running against Allison Ball, and I think she may be an attorney down that way.
Down in
that side of the eastern part, I think, of the state. Talk about Allison Ball for a minute, if you would, David.
Well, let me start out with Rick Nelson. Rick's a real good guy. I really like Rick. We worked together for a long time. He's a retired teacher, and he's a pretty conservative guy. He does toe the party line every once in a while, but I really am I'm a fan of Rick Nelson's. But I tell you, this Allison Ball, she calls herself the good Allison, and she has, I think, a good leg up on that. Got the endorsement of the Courier-Journal, for crying out loud. Not that that's a good thing, but she's a sharp young lady, and I think she has a future ahead of her in politics, and perhaps this is a stepping stone. But if you've watched any of the debates, you know that she's a serious candidate. She's sharp as a tack, and I think she'd do a good job.
Rick Nelson, do you want to talk about him, having served with him?
Yeah, Rick actually serves as chairman of the Labor and Industry Committee in the House, and I'm a member of that committee, so I've worked fairly intimately with Rick. And the thing that stands out to me about Rick, I know he's a retired teacher. He and I are similar in that both of us are equally as bad at raising funds, and I know that he's had very little funds. Maybe some has come in late, but you haven't seen any statewide ads being ran by Rick. But here's the thing that stands out to me, based on my experience with Rick Nelson: he's a hard worker, and to be honest, hard work, I've seen throughout my life, hard work will trump intelligence a lot of times. So that's what impresses me about Rick. He's former coach, teacher, and a hard worker and a straight shooter.
All around
and
good
he
guy.
Hasn't always agreed with the party line. I can testify to that also.
You know, the first time I met him I was at a function. He came up, wanted to know where I was from, and he starts talking about Dudley Hilton. I guess being down in that area, and Dudley being the football coach down there, and that was the first thing, and we shared Dudley Hilton's stories for about 10 or 15 minutes, and he knew the late Jeff Robbins, who coached football here for several years as well, so I had a good talk with him. How do you view that race?
Rick, by the way, accused us of stealing Dudley Hilton.
Is that right?
When we got him in this part of the state. He wasn't real happy about that. He was tremendously successful over at Bell County. Again, in my view, as I say, hard work will generally win elections, and as well as a lot of other things in life. And I see Rick as coming out okay in that one, because in spite of the fact that he had limited funds. About the only campaign ads I've seen are on schedules, football schedules on cards that say Rick Nelson. But he's out there working hard. I know he's been to Lebanon, and I see, if I were in the predicting business and forced to predict, I'd probably say that Rick's probably going to win that.
By the way, Dudley Hilton, I remember his name from when I was playing high school. I think it was either Springfield High School or Washington County High School back in the 60s, and the rumor was, and he was so good, the rumor was he was about 25 years old playing high school football.
That rumor came to Lebanon, too.
Yeah, and anyway, a lot of times when people go into the ballot, they have in mind one race. Maybe they're going in there voting for governor in this case. So they look up in the other races and they look at the names. Well, heck, Rick Nelson's real familiar. If you've never met him, never heard of him, you know the name Rick Nelson. And so that's a positive thing for Rick. But I think Allison's done she's run a pretty good campaign. She does work really hard, travels all over the place, and so she might be able to overcome that pretty well. And again, she was endorsed by the Courier-Journal, for crying out loud. So
I like that, for crying out loud. You kind of had, I think, Ryan Quarles, did he also get the endorsement as well? So that's much better than, I guess, the Republican Party would figure from the Courier Journal.
Correct.
And
Okay.
Rick, I heard Rick speaking recently, and he said if people vote for him because they believe he's Rick Nelson, the singer, that is okay with him.
Moving up, Auditor of Public Accounts, Representative Mike Harmon from nearby Danville, Adam Edlin, who's no stranger to this area. He's made several trips down this way. Edlin is the incumbent in this race. I'd say, Terry will let you talk about Adam for a minute and the job that you feel like he's done in his first term.
Yeah, Adam, I am a friend of Adam, and I think he's done a good job looking at some of these very difficult, the work he did with regards to these special districts, and I believe it was close to $3 billion that was being spent of taxpayer money that was basically nobody was watching that closely, and I think he did a great job with that, and some of the other investigations he's done, and has taken on some investigations that typically or traditionally auditors haven't undertaken in Kentucky. I believe school boards. He says in his speeches he sent a school superintendent to jail in northern Kentucky when he audited and found that they were stealing. And there's nothing worse than abusing public trust and a public fund. So to me, in that race, I think Adam is in my view, very clearly the most qualified candidate, and I expect Adam will prevail in that one.
Yeah, Adam's done he hasn't just been holding office. You know, a lot of people in some of these constitutional offices are just there until they can run for something else. I believe that's the case with Adam, except he also is working while he's in it. So I do think he has the edge in this. But I tell you what, I've met Adam, and I know Adam, and he's friendly with me. But I saw a TV commercial that he paid for against Mike Harmon. Mike, you know, he's a wonderful man. You won't meet a nicer fella. And this TV commercial said that Mike was traveling at taxpayers' expense on junkets here and there, and said he spent $20,000 on this travel. Well, now, every year there's 2 or 3 conferences that legislators go to, and they go from around the country, and they gather in places. And last year I think there was one in Seattle, there's been one in New Orleans and San Diego, those sorts of things. And almost every legislator goes to about everyone they can every year. Mike does the same thing, but he doesn't go as often as others. And it's not a junket. Nobody's paying for you. No lobbyists are paying for you to go out there. This is a legislative conference with a valid meeting space and seminars and those sorts of things. And so the commercial had a private jet picking up Mike, and Mike refusing to just dropping off to the baggage carrier who didn't like him because of that. Like he's spending, but Mike has probably been on fewer trips than just about any other legislator in his 12 years in office. Probably I'm the only one that maybe has gone to less. I don't know about you, Terry, but I'm so disappointed in Adam on that. He doesn't have to do that sort of thing, and that's my biggest caution. And I have wanted to get Adam off to the side sometime, and this is for a couple of years. Every time he talks in public, he's really partisan. And look, Adam, you know, it's the entire Commonwealth that you represent and want to represent in the future. Don't alienate yourself by calling people of the other party names or belittling them. And then this ad, I really need to talk to Adam about that.
Mm-hmm.
That was really below him.
So pretty much,
Well,
will turnout affect that race as much as any?
Adam would probably say that Mike has said some pretty extreme things about him also. And by the way, the travel, we all do that. I think it's when we can meet with other legislators from around the country, share experiences, share knowledge and expertise that may not be available here, I think it's worthwhile as long as it's kept within reason. I hope mine has been kept within reason.
Sure.
We're going to find out because I know the Republican Party and another group has already requested all of my travel expenses, and we'll
Every
hear about
year-
that.
every
They
year
do that on all of us.
Newspaper does it and
So
everything.
my objective on that is to go to enough to get the good they provide, always being conscious of what the taxpayers are having to spend. So if I show up that I'm going more than other people, then that's my bad. And so I kind of stopped worrying about that. I worried about it at
I
first,
guarantee
but-
you, you're not at the top. I guarantee you, there's
No, I
some
don't.
real
I'm
travelers there.
pretty sure I'm not. Yeah.
All right, so it was brought up to me the other day that, Adam Elam should win this race, but if there's no excitement about the whole either ticket up and down, that turnout could play a factor. This is one race that could play a factor. Do you see that?
Well, I don't know, Dennis. I suppose that that the general dissatisfaction with the National Party, the National Democrat Party under the leadership of Barack Obama, could have an effect on which lever people pull. If that would make the difference, then yes. But I think I agree with Terry that I give the edge in this race to the incumbent Auditor of Public Accounts, in whom I am seriously disappointed.
I like this. All right, Terry, we need to start charging you all for these endorsements or whatever.
Yeah,
Go
these
ahead.
things we usually have to pay for.
You want any comment, or you want to move on?
Well, I think basically I agree with David. I think Adam will win that. From what I know of Adam, he is a person of integrity. I'm not going to judge him based on the ads, simply because if you compare it to what's going on in national politics, it's probably really pretty mild. And the lack of interest is statewide races just don't generate the kind of interest that school board, local House of Representatives races, judges, magistrates locally. And so that's, I think, explains why we're not hearing
All right,
a whole lot of talk about it.
I was kind of saving that for the talk on the governor's race, but you brought it up. And two things come to mind. Years ago, candidates would come to every community. You would have rallies. You would actually see the candidates. And I guess television has taken the place of John Y. Brown flying into Lebanon in a helicopter during his primary, or all the candidates. You would see them. And I guess the other that I'm going to bring up along with that I want you guys to address is the constitutional offices are the only thing on the ballot. One thing it does, it protects a sitting legislator from having to give up a seat to run.
I agree.
And when there's not a lot of other things, there's nothing else to vote on. We have a school board race in Marion County unopposed. Does that affect the excitement and turnout in the election?
I would think so. National races generally generate a lot more interest than do these statewide races. As to the campaigning, for Terry and me, state representative races, you're at the kind of the upper end of the door-to-door. You need to do door-to-door. State senator, oh my goodness, they have about 3 times the people, and you can't do the intensive door-to-door except through a lot of volunteers. And take it up another notch to the statewide office, and it's impossible to do that except through volunteers. Now, these people have been traveling all over the state. Every candidate for every office has been traveling all over the state. They just apparently haven't made it to places that you've been very often. I know all tickets races have been in Bardstown at least once, and some of them 2 or 3 times. Now, I agree with you 100%, Dennis. This odd year race for the constitutional offices, I think that was set up specifically so that legislators could run for that statewide office and not give up their seat. And the people of Kentucky voted that in the constitutional amendment. When was that, Terry? You remember? Was it in the 90s?
No.
And so I think when they changed Patton to 2 terms.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just it's a little aggravating that it's set up that way. I wish it wasn't. I think people ought to make a choice. You're either going to run for this office or that, and so but that's another matter. I think we've had legislation introduced to redo that, but
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to go anywhere.
And I hate to put you
Yeah,
on the
well,
spot.
we're
Okay,
not
you knew where
talking
that
national
led. That's okay. You knew where that was heading when it came out, so we'll ignore the
Well,
Rand
you got to
Paul.
plan far in advance, well in advance about that. You never knew where he was going to be in the polls at that time, and quite frankly, I think you'll get greater participation in a caucus vote at precinct level than you will in a statewide primary.
Okay.
So.
Terry, your thoughts on it?
I'm still thinking. I'm still thinking about that, running for two offices at one time. I think the first thing is to Jamie Comer's credit. He ran and had to choose when he ran last year, and he had to give up the ag commissioner's job.
Oh, that's true.
And I think that's very much to his credit. And I agree that should be the case. You should get to choose. You should have to choose which. You shouldn't have a plethora of offices, and you might win one, might lose the rest of them. I don't like that. As to how campaigns are handled, I'm pretty traditional. Probably will stay as long as I'm in this endeavor. And I believe in knocking on doors, but even in a house race, you can't knock on all of them. So what you try to do is get a good sample. You try to make sure the people in the community know every community. You can't touch every community, I think, even as a senator during a campaign. And you try to make sure that you want them. But the emergence, the significant thing to me about this race is the yard signs. Where I live, there's basically two sets of yard signs, depending on who owns the property. And so basically there's very little yard sign activity, and I believe that is being replaced by social, not only paid media, but by social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, of which Facebook I touch a little bit, and Instagram and Twitter I'm pretty much useless on. So that may be my demise, I don't know. But I think that explains that there's a lot of stuff going on. In other words, it's not as visible as it used to be. And just the fact that, as I said, there's no local guys. I mean, very few of our citizens here in Marion County or in Nelson County know personally these people running for office. And whereas when David and I run, they feel like they pretty much know us, and they're a little more passionate about it. And in my case, last year, one of the worst things the Republican Party did was run those negative ads that blasted me. It actually made a lot of people. I tried not to get angry about it, but I was hurt, but not angry. But it made a lot of people, my supporters, angry, and I don't think that's a good tactic.
And you've seen that in your race a few years ago, and I think kind of turned the tide or pushed you forward even more with the negative stuff.
From the first day you go to campaign school, they say you leave. You got to understand you don't like negative campaigning, but it works. And at our level, state representative level, I know that I can control what my party does, and so I didn't even mention candidates in the last couple of races, and certainly, well, that's not true on the 2012 race. Did mention them, but nothing nasty. When you just highlight somebody's record, it's not nasty. It's just stating the facts. But you can characterize in the same way that Adam Edlin characterized Mike Harmon in a very negative, nasty way. But you can control that. In my opinion, I told the Republican Party of Kentucky, I said, no, you're not going to be running that ad. You're not going to bring up this issue or that issue. And they listened to me. But I don't know if you have the same relationship with the Democratic Party of Kentucky on your side or not. But those independent ads, well, heck, yeah. I can pretty much control those or condemn them as soon as they come out.
Yeah, and pretty much that was my experience. The outside PACs, of course, we can't control or coordinate.
You can come right out and say
you don't agree with it.
Pull that thing
and
off there right
actually,
now.
in my race in 12, I had to send a letter to the editor. They made me pay advertising to send the letter in response to one of those ads saying I didn't support that negative attack
Oh,
on
did
my
they do that? I didn't know
opponent.
they did. At
Yeah.
Kentucky Family Values, is, quote unquote
Yeah.
family value, they're one of the most negative people I've
Yeah.
ever seen. That group, that
Yeah.
you know, and they use the term Kentucky Family Values, and it's almost all funded out of Washington D.C. It's just, it's really not
Right.
good.